It's an amazing, blessed opportunity, and we're sitting here talking about, oh, Fernando Mendoza, why aren't you guys mad at him the way you're mad at my
Browns
guy?
fans.
Like, think of how silly you sound.
It's even sillier when you're not talking to Browns fans. That's not a Browns fan.
Wait, well, it's people.
We're in Cleveland.
It's people in Shedeur's corner.
I don't care.
Who have been co-signed by the father and head coach of the Buffaloes.
It doesn't matter to me.
This
Are coming out of coming from Berea, especially from a lot of the people, the sports writers and everybody saying that Shedeur is taking a step back a little bit.
People are talking about Shedeur and saying that he's having some problems getting the offense to the line. The offensive line can't hear his cadence at times. He's having problems with the play calling. I've heard all of that coming out of camp here. So where do you come out on all that?
I think it's bullshit myself because I think it's a way of saying the kid is dumb. I think that's a way of saying the kid is not too bright, and I disagree with that. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't like Shedeur. When I talk about a lot of people, I'm talking about a lot of people in the media would much rather see Watson start at quarterback rather than Shedeur.
Something very strange is happening around Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland right now, and the longer this training camp goes, the harder it becomes to ignore. Every time Shedeur answers one criticism with his play, another criticism seems to appear almost immediately. First, it was that he held the football too long. Then it was that he could not process NFL defenses fast enough. Then it became his movement inside the pocket. Then people questioned whether he could consistently command an NFL offense. But now that several of those concerns are starting to look very different on the practice field, the conversation has somehow shifted again. Suddenly we are hearing about cadence, communication, getting the offense lined up, and little pre-snap details as if those things erase everything else we have watched him improve. That is what makes this entire situation so interesting. Shedeur Sanders is not having a perfect training camp, and nobody should pretend that he is. He is still a young quarterback learning a new offense, working with different personnel, adjusting to new terminology, and competing against one of the better defensive groups he is going to see all year. Mistakes are going to happen, but the way some of those mistakes are being framed is starting to feel completely different from the way his progress is being treated. When Shedeur makes an explosive play, some people quickly move on. When he shows better pocket discipline, it barely becomes a major story. When he gets the football out quicker, the conversation lasts for a few minutes.
The only Shedeur question that anybody should be asking is, would they go to Zappy before they'd go to Shedeur? And I think the answer is yes. They do not want to see Shedeur Sanders anytime. It's why every day there's a new leak coming from that building about how unprepared he is and how he's walking around the building not doing what he's supposed to. You think the Rex Ryan thing that came out the other day just came off the top of his head and he made it up? No, that's what everybody has been hearing. Daryl Ryder sat in your seat yesterday, said the exact same thing. Shedeur Sanders, you guys can make it the focal point of the YouTube chat, and we appreciate all of you guys for tuning in real time. The numbers are off the charts. But YouTube, the fact that you guys are investing so much time in a guy that was the fourth string quarterback before they traded away the guy they really wanted to be the starting quarterback should tell you all you need to know. Your dude fell for a reason. There is a reason that you guys thought he was top 5 and the rest of the league thought he didn't belong in the NFL. You guys were wrong. Everybody in the NFL was right, and there's a reason they were right.
But when there is one small communication issue before the snap, suddenly it becomes another reason to question whether he can handle the job. That is where Browns legend Hanford Dixon enters this story, because his reaction changes the temperature of this conversation completely. This is not just another fan sitting at home defending a quarterback he likes. Dixon understands what NFL football looks like from inside the building. He understands how difficult communication becomes during camp. He understands how new systems create confusion, how offensive linemen can jump early, how quarterbacks and centers need time to get on the same page, and how small problems can look much bigger when every single rep is being watched under a microscope. So when someone with that kind of background pushes back against the way Shedeur is being discussed, Browns fans are going to pay attention. And that is exactly why this story is becoming bigger than one practice or one quarterback battle. It is starting to become a question about expectations. What exactly does Shedeur Sanders have to do before people admit that he is improving? Because some of the biggest concerns surrounding him before this season were very specific. People wanted quicker decisions. They wanted less drifting backward in the pocket. They wanted him to trust what he was seeing. They wanted him to release the football before pressure completely collapsed around him. They wanted him to show that he could operate with timing instead of constantly relying on late playmaking. Well, Watch what is happening now. Shedeur has increasingly shown a willingness to stand his ground inside the pocket. He is getting to throws earlier. He is showing more confidence at the line of scrimmage. He is making adjustments. He is attacking windows before receivers are completely open instead of waiting until everything is obvious.
I think those guys can be, like your tight ends, can be matchup guys if they've got the right skill set. And so I think Dylan's on his way to that. That play that happened yesterday happened organically on a scramble. He did a great job of turning up the sidelines. And that's where you saw Shedeur's elite playmaking ability. And that's the one thing that between him and also Deshaun, when you've got guys, and Dylan the same way, Taylor, when you've got guys that are two-play quarterbacks, you're going to have to live with a little bit of lost yardage plays. I mean, that's part of it. You can go back to Ben Roethlisberger, and he would lead the league in sacks, and the son of a gun would lead the league in scrambles and jacking that thing down the field about 60 yards and making explosive plays. So there's going to be a little bit of that you have to live with. You got to shrink that. But what you saw was an elite play by two playmakers. It's fun to watch. And the defense allowed us to let it play on. I mean, that's what they're doing a great job of, is let it play on. Let us evaluate the back end and our ability to make plays when a play breaks down.
Those are not flashy improvements that always become viral clips, but for a young quarterback, those details matter enormously. And yet somehow, instead of hearing that the development is working, we are already being introduced to another list of concerns. That is the part Browns fans should be watching closely, because there is a huge difference between evaluating a quarterback fairly and constantly moving the standard every time he reaches it. If Shedeur was still making the exact same mistakes he made 1 year ago, then criticism would be completely understandable. But if those mistakes are becoming less common, then the conversation has to evolve too. You cannot spend months saying pocket discipline is the problem. Watch the pocket discipline improve, and then act like that improvement never mattered because now you want to talk about cadence. And this is where Todd Monken becomes extremely important to the story. Monken is watching these quarterbacks every day. He is seeing the meeting room work. He is seeing the mistakes that fans never see. He is seeing how quickly corrections are made. Most importantly, he is seeing what happens when a play breaks down and a quarterback has to create something that was never drawn on the board. That matters with Shedeur because one of the biggest reasons people continue to believe in him is that he can turn a normal play into something dangerous very quickly. He has that confidence to extend the action, move outside structure, keep his eyes downfield, and attack when a defense thinks the play is already finished. When your own head coach is acknowledging that type of ability, it becomes much harder to sell the idea that this quarterback is suddenly moving backward. And that is why this next stretch of camp could become uncomfortable for some people who made up their minds about Shedeur Sanders a long time ago. Because if he keeps improving the exact weaknesses that were supposed to hold him back, eventually the conversation cannot stay the same. At some point, the question may stop being, what is wrong with Shedeur Sanders? The question may become, why are people working so hard to find something new? This is where the entire Shedeur Sanders conversation starts getting uncomfortable for the people who have been trying to frame every little mistake like some major red flag. Because it is one thing when fans push back. Fans are emotional. Fans pick sides. Fans defend their guy. That is normal. But when a Browns legend like Hanford Dixon starts questioning the way Shedeur is being discussed, that carries a completely different kind of weight. Dixon knows what NFL pressure looks like. He knows what happens when a young player is learning a new system. He knows how messy training camp can be, especially when a team is installing new concepts, working with different offensive line combinations, and asking quarterbacks to command everything at full speed. So when he hears people talking like Shedeur Sanders is suddenly falling apart because of cadence issues, communication problems, or small pre-snap mistakes, he clearly does not buy the idea that those things tell the full story. And that is exactly where this media conversation starts to look strange.
From today, and what you're going to see here, and by the way, you know, Gage, my goodness, we gotta, the drops have been horrendous for us, but you know, let's start from the top, right? Let's start from the Hanford Dixon's word. And Hanford Dixon says, hey, I think it's BS. I think it's BS that Shedeur simply can't do things pre-snap, can't get them in and out the huddle, can't start the ball, or can't get them to snap the ball, right? Here, I'm going to show you, I believe this was Monday. Shedeur changing the play at the line, making the right read, getting the ball out quickly. I mean, if that's a catch, that's a touchdown. We're having a different conversation, right? Right? But shout out to, I believe this was Coop that tweeted this out, right? I'm gonna be criticizing it when you're wrong, but also shout out to Coop because he says, look, Shedeur was very decisive here. he's looking very comfortable at the line of scrimmage. So what I want to do is look, you can believe Hanford Dixon, and if you don't believe Hanford Dixon, this is what I want you to do.
Because think about how quickly the standard has changed. For months, people questioned whether Shedeur could process fast enough. They questioned whether he could get the football out on time. They questioned whether he could stay disciplined inside the pocket. They questioned whether his style would translate when NFL defenders started closing space faster than anything he saw in college. Those were not small concerns. Those were some of the biggest reasons critics gave for doubting him. But now that camp has moved along, what are we hearing? Not nearly as much about those things. Instead, the conversation has shifted toward whether the offense can hear him clearly enough, whether the cadence is perfect, whether everybody gets lined up fast enough, whether the operation looks clean every single snap. Those details matter, of course they do. Quarterback is the most demanding position on the field, but suddenly treating every communication issue like proof that Shedeur cannot run an offense feels way too convenient, especially when this entire Browns offense is still adjusting. You have new terminology. You have young linemen. You have different personnel groups rotating in and out. You have quarterbacks learning how Todd Monken wants everything called and executed. You have receivers learning timing. You have centers learning different voices and rhythms. Training camp is supposed to be the place where those rough edges get cleaned up. So why is every rough edge around Shedeur being treated like some kind of character judgment on his football intelligence? That is the part Hanford Dixon's reaction puts directly under the microscope. And fans are noticing it too. Because when Shedeur does something positive, the story seems to disappear quickly. He makes a sharp pre-snap adjustment and people move on.
Doing fine. I don't think you're really going to know until you get through all the installs.
Sean and Shedeur in the meetings. We see them with such different personalities. So how are they like in meetings?
Well, they do have different personalities. As Dylan does, every human being's unique. But both are very sharp.
He gets the ball out faster. People move on. He stands tall in the pocket and delivers under pressure. People move on. But let one snap look messy. Let one cadence issue happen. Let somebody jump early, and suddenly we are back to asking whether he is ready for NFL football. That is not balanced evaluation. That is why Dixon's voice matters here. He is not saying Shedeur is flawless. Nobody with any sense is saying that. What makes his reaction powerful is that he is challenging the way the mistakes are being packaged. There is a huge difference between saying, Shedeur needs to clean up the operation, and saying, this proves Shedeur cannot handle the mental side of quarterback. Those are two completely different arguments. One is normal development, the other is a label. And Shedeur Sanders has been fighting labels from the second he entered this league. Too slow processing, holds the football, takes unnecessary sacks, does not move well enough, cannot command an NFL offense, too much hype, too much attention. Every few months it feels like another box gets added to the list. But what happens when the player starts checking those boxes off? That is what people are watching right now. Shedeur is not suddenly perfect, but he is showing growth in areas that critics once treated like permanent weaknesses. He looks more decisive. He looks more comfortable operating from structure. He is making quicker throws. He is showing a better feel for when to stay inside the pocket and when to create outside of it. Most importantly, he keeps competing. And while all of that is happening, the media conversation somehow keeps finding a way back to what he supposedly cannot do. That is why this is no longer just another camp storyline. It is becoming a test of whether people are actually willing to update their opinion when the player changes.
I feel like when I watch Shedeur at camp, I feel a lot more explosiveness. Whereas Deshaun, he'll get you not as much downfield, but he'll come across the field more with a little bit more tighter spiral, and he'll look more like a professional. Whereas I'm looking at Shedeur, and it's like, ball going in bucket here, ball's going over the top here, and maybe an overthrow here, but he's going for those explosive plays. And I think when I think about what Todd Monken has talked about and the type of offense that he wants to run, he really wants to be explosive and have a lot of points. And I feel like Shedeur fits that most.
Because criticizing a young quarterback is easy. Admitting that the same quarterback is fixing the things you criticized is much harder. And if Shedeur keeps stacking strong practices, keeps correcting mistakes, and keeps showing that the same weaknesses people attacked last year are starting to disappear, then this conversation is going to get louder. This is the part of the Shedeur Sanders story that should probably be getting a lot more attention right now. Because while the media keeps finding new things to question, some of the biggest criticisms that followed Shedeur into this season are quietly becoming harder and harder to use against him. Think about what people were saying before camp really got going. They said he held the football too long. They said he drifted too much inside the pocket. They said he relied too heavily on late playmaking. They said he needed to process defenses faster. They said NFL pressure would expose him because the windows would close quicker and the pass rush would get home faster. Those were not random little comments. Those were major talking points around Shedeur Sanders for months. And now, a lot of those talking points suddenly do not sound nearly as loud. That should tell you something, because Shedeur has clearly been working on the exact areas people said would limit him. You can see it in the way he is standing inside the pocket. You can see it in the way the football is coming out earlier. You can see it in how quickly he is getting through certain reads. You can see it when he is willing to take a hit and still deliver instead of immediately drifting backward and creating a tougher throw for himself. That is real development.
Right? We're talking about that same quarterback, but one good day from Deshaun Watson, and all of a sudden, the Browns media is like, oh, I mean, is Shedeur even going to make the team? Is he going to, I mean, what if they just send him in outer space? It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's obscene. We forget that he's a second-year player battling a 9-year vet. They want you to forget that. They want you to conveniently forget that Deshaun Watson has been playing football in shorts in practice for more years than almost any player combined right now. He spent 2 years practicing football. And when we get to football practice, the 9-year NFL veteran cannot separate himself from the second year. Second year, Deshaun's learned multiple new offenses. He has every single advantage. This is what we have again. Last year, Dylan Gabriel got every single advantage. Get the first team reps out the gate. Will Stein offense is similar to Kevin Stefanski's offense. You get first team reps even when Joe Flacco was the first team quarterback. Right? And
development is exactly what you are supposed to want from a second-year quarterback. Nobody should expect Shedeur Sanders to walk into camp and suddenly look like a 10-year veteran. That is not realistic. But when a young quarterback takes one of his biggest weaknesses and starts turning it into something that no longer controls the conversation, that should matter. Instead, it feels like some people are treating that progress like it never happened. That is the frustrating part. Because if you spent all offseason telling everybody that Shedeur could not process quickly enough, then you should also be willing to say something when he starts getting the ball out before a receiver has even finished his break. If you spent months saying he could not stay disciplined in the pocket, then you should probably acknowledge when he is standing in there, keeping his base, and delivering through pressure. If you said he needed to become more decisive, then you cannot just ignore the reps where he looks much more decisive and move straight to the next complaint. That is not how honest evaluation works. And this is where the media coverage around Shedeur starts becoming a story by itself, because every quarterback makes mistakes in camp. Every quarterback misses throws. Every quarterback gets a protection wrong. Every quarterback has a bad rep. That is normal NFL football. But with Shedeur, the mistakes seem to become identity statements. One bad rep becomes maybe he cannot process. One communication issue becomes maybe he cannot command the offense. One missed throw becomes maybe he is taking a step backward. Meanwhile, when he fixes something that people said was a serious weakness, the reaction is much quieter. That difference matters. And Browns fans are not blind to it. They are watching Shedeur become more comfortable inside this offense. They are watching him attack downfield. They are watching him throw with confidence. They are watching him create outside structure when a play breaks down. They are watching him stay late and keep working after practice. That does not mean he should automatically be handed the starting job, but it absolutely means the conversation should be more balanced. And this is also where Todd Monken's role becomes important again. Monken is not evaluating Shedeur based on one viral clip or one bad rep. He is watching every snap. He is watching how Shedeur responds to coaching. He is watching how quickly he corrects mistakes.
But it definitely matters to them.
Everybody's had goofballs in their corner. Baker had goofballs in his corner. Bernie had goofballs in his corner.
Let the record show people in Shedeur that Ken Carman is calling Shedeur people goofballs. I don't know who this person is, but you're sitting there ripping all these people. I just think it's a giant waste of time to argue with people who are strangers on the internet, on the radio, with people in Cleveland who are actually Cleveland fans. Lord. Patent footballs and all that other crap. Get me to 2027.
He is watching whether the same mistake happens again the next day. That is the difference between real development and internet debate. A coach is looking for patterns. The media sometimes looks for moments. And right now, the pattern around Shedeur Sanders looks more interesting than the moments people keep trying to turn into headlines. He is starting to look more comfortable. He is starting to look more aggressive in a controlled way. He is starting to trust the offense. He is starting to play faster. That is what makes the next part of this battle so important, because the longer Shedeur continues fixing the same weaknesses that once defined him, the harder it becomes to keep using the old version of Shedeur Sanders against the new one. At some point, people have to evaluate the player standing in front of them today, not the scouting report from last year, not the criticism from months ago, not the reputation that followed him into Cleveland. The player right now. And this is where Todd Monken becomes a major problem for the people trying to sell the idea that Shedeur Sanders is somehow moving backward. Because Monken is not watching this from a distance. He is not building his opinion from one clip, one headline, or one bad rep. He is standing right there, watching Shedeur operate the offense every single day, seeing what happens before the snap, after the snap, inside the pocket, outside the pocket, and most importantly, what happens when the original play completely breaks down. That changes everything. Because if the head coach keeps seeing dangerous playmaking ability from Shedeur, then the media cannot just act like a few communication issues tell the whole story. That is where the conversation starts to feel unbalanced. Of course Monken is going to correct him. Of course he's going to demand more. Of course he is going to point out mistakes. That is his job. But there is a huge difference between coaching a young quarterback hard and believing that quarterback is not progressing. Those are not the same thing. And that difference matters here. Shedeur Sanders has always had something that is very hard to teach. When a play gets ugly, when the pocket starts closing, when the timing gets disrupted, he has a natural feel for keeping the play alive and still attacking downfield. That ability can be frustrating when a quarterback holds onto the ball too long, but it can also become extremely dangerous when the player learns when to use it and when to stay inside structure. That is the real development Browns fans should be watching. Because the best version of Shedeur Sanders is not a quarterback who completely removes that creativity from his game. The best version is a quarterback who learns how to control it, stay disciplined when the play is clean, get the ball out when the read is there, step up instead of fading backward. But when everything falls apart, use that instinct and make the defense pay. That is where he can become dangerous. And Monken knows exactly what that kind of quarterback can do to a defense. A defense can cover everything correctly for 3 seconds and still lose the rep because the quarterback buys another 2 seconds and launches the ball downfield. That is brutal to defend. It changes how pass rushers attack. It changes how defensive backs maintain coverage. It forces linebackers to make decisions they do not want to make. And Shedeur has shown flashes of that throughout this camp.
As I reported last week, right now, at this moment in time, he is ahead in the competition.
I would love to have that. I'm not there yet, so I can't say that. We've been on the field 3 practices.
Shedeur basically would have to come from behind and overtake him.
What I've seen after 3 days, okay, that gives us a little bit of a 40,000-foot view of where we're at.
Shedeur will get plenty of reps, I would think.
It's always changing.
You have to get your starter ready to play. You just have to.
You've got to start to target towards who's going to start opening day. And now that can still change.
Whoever wins the job is the quarterback that they feel can best get them some victories. This is not about development. I can promise you that.
We're in the development business and the winning business. And anything that gets in the way of those 2 things have to be confronted and eliminated.
I've watched enough of these to know how this goes.
What I've learned over the years in coaching is your job is to let it play itself out.
So while some people are obsessed with whether every snap sounds perfect before the ball is even moving, Monken is also watching what happens when the ball is actually live. That is the part that cannot be ignored. Because football is not played in a meeting room. It is not played on a whiteboard. And it is definitely not played through media narratives. At some point, the quarterback has to make plays. And when Shedeur creates one of those moments where a normal rep suddenly turns into a huge gain, that tells the coaching staff something very important. It tells them that there is another level available when the offense needs it. That does not make him flawless. It does not erase the things he still needs to improve. But it makes him much harder to dismiss. And this is exactly why the criticism around Shedeur can feel so strange. If he was truly falling apart, if he looked lost, if he could not move the offense, if he was constantly making the same mistakes over and over again, then this would be a very easy story to tell. But that is not what we are seeing. We are seeing a young quarterback making mistakes while also producing some of the most exciting plays of camp. We are seeing a player learning a new system while improving areas that were considered major weaknesses. We are seeing a quarterback who is still developing, but also forcing the coaching staff to keep paying attention. That is not regression. That is a competition. And that is why the media framing matters so much. Because if every Shedeur mistake becomes evidence against him, but every great play gets treated like a temporary flash, then he is being evaluated under a standard that is almost impossible to satisfy. He cannot just be good. He has to be perfect. And no young quarterback is perfect. Not in camp, not in a new offense, not while competing against an experienced veteran. That is what makes Monken's perspective so important to this story. He does not need Shedeur to be perfect right now. He needs him to show that he can improve, respond to coaching, operate the offense, and still bring something special when the structure breaks down. And Shedeur keeps giving him reasons to keep watching. That is the part some people do not want to deal with.
I'm so locked in on this year that I don't think about the years in the prior or live in the past, because that don't benefit or help me get to my goal or the team get to our goal as a team. So it's like nothing matters to me if it is not helping us win.
Look at every practice kind of like as a race between you and Deshaun, and we're judging who's ahead, who's behind. Jim, do you do that?
We just got to get the next question. I answered this question 1,000 times. We focus on ourselves and what we do and what we need to do to get better each and every day. So that's just something y'all think about and y'all care about.
Monday is the first time the pads will come on. How much are you looking forward to that, and how do you think things will be different for you once that happens?
I live in the present, so I'm looking forward to practice today, and then after that, then I could think.
Because once the head coach starts seeing real playmaking value, the conversation changes. Now it is no longer enough to say, he made a mistake before the snap. Now you also have to answer a much bigger question, and now we get to the part of this quarterback battle that almost nobody seems willing to flip around. Why is so much of the pressure being placed on Shedeur Sanders when Deshaun Watson is the veteran who should have every possible advantage in this competition? Think about the situation for a second. Shedeur is still early in his NFL career. He is learning a new offense, adjusting to new coaching, building chemistry with different receivers, working behind different offensive line combinations, and trying to prove himself against one of the toughest defenses he is going to see all season. That is already a massive challenge. Watson, on the other hand, has years of NFL experience behind him. He has seen different coverages, he has played in different systems. He has been through quarterback meetings, game plans, protections, checks, pressure packages, and every kind of situation a defense can throw at him. So if there is one quarterback who should walk into this camp and immediately create separation, it should be Watson. But that is not what has happened. And that is why the way this battle is being discussed feels backwards. Every time Shedeur does not completely dominate, somebody asks why he has not taken the job. But why is that the question? Why are we not asking why the experienced quarterback has not completely shut the door? That is a much more uncomfortable question. Because if Watson was clearly operating at a different level every day, there would barely be a quarterback controversy. Shedeur could still have impressive moments, but everybody would understand the hierarchy. The veteran would look like the veteran. The young quarterback would look like the developmental player chasing him. Instead, Shedeur keeps hanging around. He keeps making throws that get people talking. He keeps creating explosive plays. He keeps improving areas people doubted. He keeps giving the coaching staff something to think about. And that should put pressure on Watson too. But look at how differently one good day can be treated. Watson puts together a strong practice, and suddenly the conversation can become, maybe he is taking control. Shedeur puts together a strong practice, and somehow there is often an extra condition attached to it. But was it against the first team? But what about the cadence? But what about the huddle? But can he do it consistently? But what about this one missed throw? There always seems to be another question, and asking questions is fair. That is what competition is about. The problem comes when only one quarterback constantly has to answer them. Because Watson has questions too. Can he consistently produce explosive offense? Can he protect the football? Can he make this offense more dangerous? Can he stay ahead of a young quarterback who keeps improving? Can he turn years of experience into an obvious advantage on the field? Those questions deserve just as much attention. And this is where the entire Shedeur media narrative starts to feel upside down. The young quarterback is being asked to prove he belongs every single day, while the veteran sometimes feels like he is being asked to prove he can simply hold on to the position. Those are two very different standards. Shedeur is expected to force the door open. Watson is expected to keep it from closing. And the longer this stays competitive, the more impressive Shedeur's side of the story becomes. Because a second-year quarterback does not need to be perfect to make this uncomfortable. He just needs to keep getting closer. Every improved decision matters. Every clean pocket rep matters. Every explosive throw matters. Every time he corrects something the coaching staff asked him to fix, the gap gets smaller. That is how jobs get challenged in the NFL, not always with one giant moment. Sometimes it happens slowly. One practice, one adjustment, one better read, one more explosive play. Then suddenly everyone looks around and realizes the competition is much closer than it was supposed to be. And maybe that is why the media keeps focusing so heavily on Shedeur's smaller mistakes. Because the bigger story is becoming harder to ignore. The experienced veteran has not completely separated. The young quarterback has not disappeared. And the pressure is building in both directions. That is also why the idea that Shedeur is somehow taking a major step backward feels so hard to square with what this competition actually looks like. A quarterback, truly falling apart, would not keep forcing this conversation to continue. He would fade. He would lose ground. The battle would become obvious. But Shedeur Sanders is still right in the middle of it. And now Browns fans are beginning to ask a different question. Maybe Shedeur is not the quarterback who should be explaining why this battle is still close. Maybe the veteran is. Because Watson entered camp with the experience, the history, the familiarity with NFL football, and every reason to establish control. And that is where this entire Shedeur Sanders story is heading now. At some point, the conversation has to catch up with the player. You cannot keep judging him by the same old labels if the same old weaknesses are no longer showing up the same way. You cannot keep saying he is not improving while the people watching him every day continue to see growth. And you definitely cannot keep acting like every small mistake proves something huge while every major improvement somehow gets brushed aside. That is what makes this bigger than one quarterback battle. This is about whether people are actually willing to change their opinion when a player changes. Because Shedeur Sanders has heard almost everything by now. He has heard that he holds the football too long. He has heard that he struggles with processing. He has heard that he drifts in the pocket. He has heard that he cannot command an NFL offense. He has heard that the hype is bigger than the player. But week after week, he keeps giving people new evidence to deal with. He is getting the ball out quicker. He is standing stronger in the pocket. He is creating explosive plays. He is showing more confidence before the snap. He is staying late and putting in extra work. He is competing against a veteran quarterback who is supposed to have every possible advantage. And somehow, instead of the criticism getting quieter, the target keeps moving. That is why Hanford Dixon's reaction matters. That is why Todd Monken's comments matter. Not because either one of them is handing Shedeur the job, they are not, but because both add pressure to this idea that Shedeur is somehow going backward. If a Browns legend is questioning the way the story is being framed, and the head coach is still seeing high-level playmaking from the same quarterback, then maybe the situation is not nearly as simple as some people want it to be. Maybe the real story is growth. Maybe the real story is that Shedeur is forcing people to find smaller and smaller things to criticize because some of the bigger concerns are starting to disappear. And maybe that is why this battle refuses to die. Because every time it looks like the conversation is about to settle down, Shedeur makes another play. He shows another improvement. He creates another reason for Browns fans to keep watching. Nobody knows exactly how this quarterback decision is going to end, but one thing is getting harder to deny. Shedeur Sanders is not fading away. He is still right there. He is still pushing. He is still improving. And he is still making people who wrote him off way too early explain themselves. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the Browns media is judging Shedeur Sanders fairly, or do you think they keep moving the goalposts every time he answers one of their biggest criticisms? And after everything you have seen from this training camp, who has impressed you more right now, Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson? Drop your answer in the comments because I already know Browns fans are going to have a lot to say about this one. And if you want more Browns quarterback battle updates, Shedeur Sanders breakdowns, and everything coming out of Cleveland, make sure you subscribe and stay with the channel. Because this battle is not cooling down. It is only getting harder to ignore.